This was described as one of the worst cases, if not the worst, that coroner Dr. Bickham had seen in all of his career. I mean, he's worked on murders, suicides, car accidents. You get the picture. This is the part of the video where normally I would suggest getting comfy and reaching for some warm, hot, buttery popcorn, but there is in no way, shape, or form that you want to be eating during this episode. In fact, here's a trigger warning. Trigger warning. This video is highly disturbing and is not recommended if you have a weak stomach or if you're not into grisly details about inhumane treatment, neglect, death, dead bodies, all of it. This case has it all. So if that's not your thing, this is your opportunity right now to tap out. To all of the people that stayed after that intro, welcome! I'm Tatti and I'm new to YouTube. This being my third video. Woohoo! Go me, right? This series is called Blending the Truth, where on Sundays I do my own makeup and I tell true crime stories. Some weeks I leave the mystery of whether the story is true or if it's false, and I keep you guessing until the next week's episode when I reveal the answer. Which actually reminds me, did you see last week's episode, The Watcher? Well, in this episode, I'm going to reveal to you if that's in fact a true story or if I'm just the best bullshit artist in the world and I made it all up. So if makeup, true crime, unexplained phenomenon is your thing, it's my thing too. So let's hang out. So this case is relatively new. And by new, I mean it was only settled in March this year. Have you ever been to Louisiana, to a small town called Slaughter? Fitting name, right? For today's story, at least. If you have, that's crazy because the population in Slaughter is only around like 800 people. It's very small. Lacey was 9 years old when they moved into a cute little home, and Lacey met the neighborhood kids and she hung out with them and they played together. Lacey attended school at Brownsville Baptist Academy, where she was described as very smart and very sweet. The students at the school said she was so lovely and kind and welcoming that she just made friends with everybody. Lacey was a member of the school volleyball team and she attended church in the nearby town of Zachary. However, due to Lacey being diagnosed with autism and extreme social anxiety, her parents decided to remove her from school so that they can start homeschooling her. As Lacey got older, everybody in the neighborhood started noticing that Lacey was becoming more and more withdrawn and she wasn't hanging out with her friends and stuff as much as she used to because they just had different interests. Lacey was still into watching Disney movies and, just young girl stuff, while the rest of the girls her age were into like partying, boys, cars, Yeah. This makes me so sad, but, due to the disconnection in their interests, Lacey just became a girl that they once knew. They were into all of these teenage cool things, and Lacey was just on her own. Yeah, so sad to think that this girl ended up just losing all of her friends because she was still into young girl stuff, which is, I get it. It's not their fault. And it's not hers either. Let's be real. Sorry, not sorry. I'm going to cheat with this look. I'm going to use some good old handy dandy tape because when in doubt, tape it out. The easiest way to get like the perfect line is to follow your bottom lash line and tape out to the temple. You know, just a hot tip in case you ever wanted to use tape yourself. Have a look. How do I look? So the last time that Lacey was actually seen outside in the neighborhood was by her neighbor. His name was Robert Blaze, and he knew Lacey and he knew her parents. And yeah, he seen her outside and she was exercising. She had some weights and she was just walking around the neighborhood. He described Lacey as being thin in appearance, but he didn't really take too much notice of it because Lacey was always like a really petite girl. So yeah, he just was like, Lacey's out, she's exercising. However, years passed on and Robert Blades hadn't seen Lacey around in the neighborhood. So he automatically thought that she had just moved on. She had started a life maybe outside of Slaughter because who would want to live there? Let's be real. Robert ended up deciding to ask about how Lacey was doing to Clay, which is Lacey's father. He seen Clay one day and he was mowing his lawns, so he walked over and he was like, "Hey mate, how's Lacey going?" Clay said, "Yeah, she's good, she's around," and quickly changed the subject. Robert didn't think anything of it because that's Lacey's father. Of course, he's going to have her best interest in mind. Okay, let's learn a little bit more about Clay, Lacey's father, and Sheila, Lacey's mother. So Clay is 66 years old, and I have to read his occupation because I've never heard these kind of occupations. I feel like they're just trying to polish a turd and make themselves sound higher up than what they actually are. So Clay is a member of the Battalion Rouge Civil War Round. Ever heard of one of those? Me neither. He is also a part of the zoning and planning of the town. Sheila, she is also 66 years old and she is a town alderman, an assistant to the city prosecutor. Let's be real now. Does anybody actually know what the heck those two do? Because I actually had to look it up. I don't know if it's like an American thing, but yeah, we don't have those occupations here in Australia. So I was a little bit like, what the fuck do they actually do? Clay and Sheila just look like your typical, small town assholes. Yes, that's what they are. Not all small town people, no, just them. And you'll figure out why as the story progresses, okay? And you'll agree with me. I know you will. It was said that they went to church on Sundays and were highly respected in the community. Sorry, these two just piss me off. Ugh. It was also said that they loved one another and they loved going on holidays. Picture this for a minute, okay? It's New Year's 2022. Clay and Sheila decide to go out and party. They do. And celebrate bringing in the new year. And I mean, that doesn't sound unusual, right? But what if I told you that they were the main carers for their daughter, Lacey, who had social anxiety, autism, and at the age of 16, sweet 16, she was diagnosed with severe Asperger's. So this beautiful girl relied so heavily on her parents for just like everyday things we take for granted. She relied on them for food, for water, and for going to the bathroom. Oh, and also for like showering as well. So she couldn't do anything herself. Her parents were her main carers, and they decided they wanted to go on holiday and leave Lacey on the couch all by herself. Yep, fucked up, right? I have been getting like literally so emotionally involved in this case, into the thick of it. Like, these are pages and pages of research that I have done, and in my discoveries, I had to ask Google. I typed it in, I did. And I was like, hey Google, what is the longest amount of time a human can survive without food and water? You know what it said? 3 days. Honestly, I just want to. Her parents, I do. They're just compose. They make me so angry, bro. Does anybody have like a good eye and a bad eye? Yeah. Well, I got two bad eyes. Let me take you now to January the 3rd. It was a Monday. You know, they just welcomed in the new year. The police or the sheriff's department get a phone call from a woman named Sheila, Lacey's mum. Yes. And she calls up to say, hey, my daughter isn't breathing. Following the 911 call, the sheriff's office is dispatched to the property. Upon entering the property, as soon as that door opened, there was this intense smell of urine and feces. Other officers went on to say that like they couldn't even stand in the house without gagging. Like, it was that intense. Shocked to the core of what they found, they called in coroner Dr. Bickham. Dr. Bickham stated that Sheila and Clay were emotionless. Clay was just standing in the room, just standing there. And Sheila was just sitting on a chair and had her head bowed, like looking down towards her knees. That's pretty strange behavior, if you ask me. Their child has just passed away and they're literally emotionless. Not a tear, not any sorrow, nothing. So, you know how I gave you a disclaimer in the beginning? Well, this is where it begins to get gruesome. This was really tricky to read and watch, let alone to try and reiterate it to you guys. Lacey was found deceased at the home. She only had on a t-shirt that was poorly fitting, like it didn't even fit her, and it barely even just covered her breasts. In the evidence photos, Lacey was actually laying on a couch. So there's a couch, she's laying on it, and one hand is kind of up like this. It's hard to explain, but she was kind of laying down, tilted on an angle. She was found covered from head to toe in her own bodily fluids. She had been a prisoner to the couch, unable to go and relieve herself. Poor Lacey was made to go to the bathroom where she was sitting without any help. So that's where she slept, she ate, and I'll get to that soon, and she defecated. Her using the couch as her bathroom, over time, eventually, that began to deteriorate the couch, and a large crater-like hole formed beneath her. You know how I said she was kind of like on an angle? That was her body. Her lower half was sunken into the couch where this crater had formed due to her relieving herself. Her skin had found to be melting, fusing her and the couch together. Lacey had many open wounds some of them quite large, and you can see through to the tendons. And in some cases, some of the wounds, you could literally see straight through her. And this is why the coroner said that this is one of the worst cases that he'd ever investigated. Let's circle back to where I mentioned that Lacey was extremely malnourished. When they did the autopsy, the only things that they found in Lacey's stomach were couch foam. So she had obviously been trying to survive and ate the foam from the couch that she was sitting on, laying on, in order to survive. I'm sorry to tell you, but they also found her own feces in her stomach, which means she was eating it in order to stay alive. Lacey's top lip was curled up a little bit like that, so that you could see inside her mouth. And inside her mouth, she had so many ulcers that they literally covered the entire surface of her mouth. I know what it's like to have one ulcer, let alone that many. It's just so sad. I'm telling you, this story makes me so fucking angry. It really does. Her legs were crossed underneath her, and they had, I'm pretty sure it's called contractures. Well, she had them, which meant that her legs hadn't been moved in so long that the muscles and the tendons in the muscles had actually fused together, meaning she couldn't extend or move her legs from that position. Gangrene had set into some parts of her body, her bottom being one of them, and it was hard for coroner Dr. Bickham to even know which body part he was looking at. Her body contained bed sores that were as big as dinner plates, meaning that they hadn't been cleaned or she hadn't been moved in a long time. What I would do just to fly over to America for one day and slap Sheila and Clay across their mother trucking heads. Maggots had begun to eat away at her rotting flesh. This girl was literally dying in her own body. I know that sounds really stupid. I know we all die in our own body, but she was literally just rotting away in her own body, just waiting to die. It was also stated by some of the sheriffs on the scene that sadly there were rodent droppings around her and bugs crawling all on her. Her hair was matted. There were bugs crawling in and out of Lacey's mouth, eyes, and ears, which also contained feces. Dr. Bickham ended up ruling this death as acute medical neglect. So that is the category, right? Underneath that is all the things which entails acute neglect, and they are acute malnutrition, acute starvation, immobility, acute ulcer formation, and osteomyelitis, which is a bone infection, and he seems to think that that was the cause of her death because that resulted in sepsis. Lacey was also suffering from a bacterial infection, and she also tested positive for COVID. She weighed just under 44 kilos, and I think that's about 96 pounds if you're in the US. Dr. Bickham stated that Lacey, based on her wounds, would have been sitting in that couch for over 12 years. Just there, 12 years left to rot inside her own body. It was also stated that Lacey did not die at the scene, but she did die 24 to 48 hours before law enforcement were even called. That is while they were on holiday, isn't it? If you think about it, it's 3rd of January, she called at 2 a.m. 24 to 48 hours, they were just coming back from holiday. Dr. Bickham then ended up not being able to eat for a week after doing this case, and he would also have like random outbursts of just crying.
It still bothers me today. And like I said, I've seen every kind of death there is. I've seen elderly people die of natural causes. I've seen suicides, homicides. I've seen everything there is. I've never seen a homicide like this. I have never seen an individual, a human being, literally tortured and allowed to die while she is alive. I've never seen that in my life. I've seen decomposed bodies of someone that drowns. You find the body a week later. That's one thing, and they're decomposed. Lacey did not decompose. She rotted in her own body in that hole, in that sewer, in the couch.
So a question many people have asked, and rightfully so, I had the same question, was how did Lacey end up here? According to some sources, Lacey also was dealing with locked-in syndrome. Locked-in syndrome is when you can hear, see, feel everything. Your brain is switched on and your nervous system is in full working order, but all your volunteering muscles are in a state of paralysis. Survivors with locked-in syndrome said that they could feel everything, and quite often they were in agonizing pain or discomfort and could only rely on their doctor for pain relief and their carers to move them when they felt uncomfortable. Another survivor stated that she could hear her loved ones while they were in the same room as her talking about what they were going to do with them. Again, because of this, Lacey relied so heavily on her parents. She had nobody else. I know for sure that if medical staff knew the situation of Lacey, they would have been more than happy to help. Lacey last seen a doctor when she was 16 years old. That is 20 years without seeing any medical providers. When the Fletchers were questioned and asked why they didn't seek any medical treatment for Lacey, do you know what their answer was? She didn't want to. I'm sorry, but if my child is really sick and they say, I don't want to go to the doctors or whatever, me being the parent, knowing better, I'd be like,
I'm taking you to the doctor.
so why didn't they just override her if her condition was so bad? And that's where I got a little bit confused with the case. So if Lacey has locked-in syndrome, then how would she have even been able to communicate this with her parents? I call bullshit. I do. I just think that they were selfish. Lacey was too hard to look after and they wanted to go and live their best lives. So considering the state in which Lacey had been neglected and how she was found, nothing else at the Fletcher home seemed to have been neglected. Their home was relatively clean based on evidence at the scene. It wasn't a messy home. Their lawns were mowed regularly. It was tidy. Their gardens were groomed. So you have time to do all of this, but you don't have time to look after your daughter. Your gardens and your plants got more care than what your own disabled daughter did. Another strange thing is you can't tell me that Lacey was in a different room and you didn't see her, like it was an out of sight, out of mind situation, because Sheila's chair that she used to watch TV in was in the same room as her daughter. She used to sit there and watch TV, and the smell didn't even bother them anymore. Photos of the crime scene had pictures of freshly washed clothing drying on a clothes horse or a drying rack in the same room as Lacey. A coffee table nearby contained personal belongings like baby powder, wet wipes, moisturizing lotions, face cream, and between where the coffee table was and Lacey was on the couch, there was a box full of Disney DVDs for Lacey to watch. With any big cases like this, where people have been really badly hurt or neglected, and also being in such a small town, of course, this is going to be all over the TV, which it was all over the TV, the news, social media. Everybody in America knew what was going on with the case of Lacey Fletcher. But can you believe that this is how some of the friends of the Fletchers found out that the two even had a daughter? Like, I just keep, the more I talk about this case, the more angry I get, because this could have so easily just been avoided. I'm just going to do my bottom liner and then I'll come back onto camera, okay? I don't want to poke my eye out in front of you guys. So it turns out that Clay and Sheila, they did not get brought into custody right away. I think it took about 5 months before they were arrested for the neglect of their child Lacey. And I believe this is because they weren't considered a flight risk. On May the 2nd, 2022, in the neighboring town of Clinton, Louisiana, a grand jury was shown hundreds of graphic photographs that showed Lacey at the scene in the state and the condition that she was found in. How's this though, right? Due to the nature of the photographs and how graphical they were, the jury had to be given regular breaks, and they also had medical staff nearby in case anyone fainted or needed medical treatment. These disturbing images were enough evidence to convict the Fletchers on second-degree murder and cruelty towards their daughter Lacey. This meant they were facing life imprisonment without the possibility of parole. They were then both taken into custody. I know what you're thinking. Yay, right? No, don't celebrate too early. I did too. Don't worry. I did too. Just 24 hours after they were taken into custody, they were both granted bail and had to fork out $300,000 each in order to get out of custody and, go live at home while they were under investigation to be found guilty. So yes, 24 hours after Sheila and Clay were arrested and kept in custody, they came out with the $300,000. Sheila had her money and was like, there we are, get out of jail free card. And Clay, unfortunately for him, he was short $3,000, so he had to wait to the next day until they got that little bit of money together in order to get him out. Boo-hoo, right? Sucked in, Clay, dumbass. On May 8th, the Fletcher's defense attorney, Stephen Moore, filed a motion to withdraw the charges against his clients, arguing that the DA's office served documents that were different to those filled with the local court clerk. Moore said that there were only 6 small differences within the documents, but it was enough to catch the DA's office out on a technicality. Yeah, right. And I get why defense attorneys, why they do it, because their clients very well could be innocent. But you can't tell me, okay? You can't tell me that as a defense attorney hearing and seeing this evidence, you think for 1 second that your clients are innocent. You can't. Not for any money. So on May 22nd, Judge Catherine Betsy Jones tossed out the case due to this technicality. On June 19th, the Fletchers then had to start all over again and sit in front of a grand jury, and that grand jury had to be shown all of these graphical images again. They were arrested, they were granted bail, and had to come up with the $300,000. The DA stated that they would get justice for Lacey, and the public will know that caregivers will be charged with neglecting or abusing a person in their care. On Wednesday, March the 20th, just 1 month ago, Sheila and Clay were sentenced to 40 years imprisonment, 20 years suspended, and 5 years supervised probation when they are released from jail. They're both 66, so let's just hope that never happens. Get this though, right? Get this. When the couple were asked, why did you not ask for help? You know what Sheila's response was? I didn't think anybody could look after my child as well as her own mother. Bitch, you let your daughter die in the worst way possible, and you don't think for a second that anybody else could have done a better job. Like, really? I don't know. It just makes me so sad to think that the pain Lacey may have suffered, well, would have suffered during this time without any medical treatment for the last 20 years. It is so heartbreaking to think, out of all the places in the world, being at your parents' house, you're meant to feel the most loved. And Lacey didn't get that. You know, I said it before, but I'll say it again. I'll say it as many times as I need to. Her parents did her so wrong, which leaves me with this message. Please, if you are struggling with caring for the person you're caring for, please just know that there is help out there, and all you have to do is ask. You just have to reach out, whether it be a medical professional, a family member, a friend. There's always going to be help out there. And don't be too embarrassed or too shy or too proud not to. It's 100% okay to ask for help. Anyway, in the beginning of this video, I mentioned that I was going to let you know if last week's video, The Watcher, if that was a true or a false story. If you guessed that video was true, then go you. You got it right. Woo! Derek and Maria Portis sold their property for $890,000. That is like just under $500,000 that they originally bought it for. Not to mention all the added extras of renovations and professionals they hired. Remember the detectives? Good news though, it ended on a good note for them because popular streaming platform Netflix, yes, well, they bought the story off of the producers. They bought it from them, which means they probably ended up making their money back, and they made a series out of it. So if you haven't seen it, it's a good watch. I mean, they have, as TV series do, stretch the truth a little bit. Derek and Maria said that they would never watch the show though because of all the trauma that they inflicted in real life. Why would they want to relive that again, right? So it makes sense. I don't blame them. If you like this video, please hit the thumbs up, and if you want, subscribe. Also, if you want to know what products that I used in this video, you can find them all in the caption down there. What do you think of this look? Do you like it? Is it a vibe? What about my new background? You'll probably see it change and evolve over the next coming weeks, but I don't know what to put on these shelves yet. Let me know in the comments which story I should cover next week. But until then, Thanks for watching, sis, and I'll see you in the next one.